Over the last week or so, there has been some rumors floating around that the Mets might be looking to move Carlos Carrasco. The expected return from the Mets is a controllable, younger pitcher who is major league ready for the 2023 season. There's quite a few teams that could draw interest and could pick up the phone for Carrasco. So we decided to break down 5 teams that could trade for Carlos Carrasco. Now, some of these teams are looking to compete, and they want Carrasco in the back end of the rotation. Some of these teams are looking to acquire him for asset management, where they can trade him at the deadline for some prospects. Either way, we know that Carrasco is on the tough side of 30 and has had a lot of injury history in the last 2 years.
I would take a guess that probably 90% of this audience who clicked on this video have probably never heard of 90% of the people who we're about to talk about. Because yes, Carlos Carrasco, like you said, 36-year-old, 1 year, decent amount of money attached to his name. Yes, it's cheaper than what the market, the free agent market has been showing us. They're not going to get a generational top prospect there. He might get, and they've said that they want controllable arms. Well, those cost decent amount for guys who are actually good. So maybe the Mets, especially with these guys, are some high upside pieces of who are former top prospects that maybe got to the big leagues and faltered, who can be brought in for cheap and can have control. In the worst case, you stash in AAA. Some outfield depth, because obviously the Mets do not have the greatest outfield depth of prospects. So maybe you could potentially add another. Maybe made it clear they want a win-now player. But maybe the trading of Carrasco to get a couple of prospects could lead down the line of the trade deadline. Hey, you can go use those extra couple of pieces to make another trade.
Some of these guys are controllable arms. Some of these guys are prospects that may be flopped and their value has kind of decreased over the past few years. But we know that you're not going to get this superstar level return for Carlos Carrasco. The first team being the Boston Red Sox, a team that definitely looks like they want to somewhat compete and bring in some pitching. We don't really know what direction they're going in. So here are some pieces that could possibly be coming back in return. First being Josh Taylor. He's a 29-year-old lefty reliever. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He was injured all of the 2022 season. He's got good command. He's got iffy control, mid-90s fastball, heavy breaking slider, active spin tumbling sinker, and he loves to throw his curveball to right-handed hitters. Jarren Duran, 26-year-old outfielder, 6'2", 212, former 7th round pick by Boston back in 2018. He's flopped so far at the major league level so far offensively, but he could be a 4th outfield option to replace the loss of maybe Jake Mangum in AAA. Strong arm, elite speed, overall a sub-average to average defender. And then there's Blaze Jordan. He is 19 years old, currently the 9th overall prospect, first baseman, third baseman, 6'2", 220 pounds, former 3rd round pick by Boston back in 2020. The power ceiling for this kid is very high, but that does not stray from his ability to get on base since his power has not completely reached its ceiling yet.
That left-handed pitching at a premium for the Mets that should be looking to add anything. Power potential and a potential 4th outfielder. Blaze, he's been a phenomenon since he was 14. He was hitting bombs out of the old Arlington Stadium with a metal bat at age 14. This kid was one of these like power phenoms. He's been in the minor leagues for 2 years, and his highest level he's ranked was A+ ball. It did have a very good, it has hit well of that second tier of prospects. There's not much power in the system. This could be a chip that if it was in a different situation, probably they wouldn't give up. Decent on base guy, but again, he's just going to be a pure prototypical power hitting DH most likely in the big leagues, worst case first baseman. Then you move into a guy like Jarren Duran, like you said, the Mets outfield prospects currently that could potentially help the team next year is Khalil Lee. We've seen that experiment. It is not great. Yes, Jarren is not the best hitter, but again, in his most infamous moment in the big leagues is giving up that inside the park homer to Raimel Tapia. But a guy who has major league options, he has 4 years of team control, a guy you can just stash in Syracuse, and if need, obviously, you've got guys like Brandon Nimmo and Starling Marte who will have their injury bug. He could be just a guy who could fill in a couple days. Yes, is he the greatest bat? No, but he still has some high upside and he's speed, which again, Mets could also use. And then Josh Taylor. Yes, the Mets have gone out and add Brooks Raley, but I would love to see him add another solid left-handed reliever to give Buck a few more options, not just use so he can have a second lefty, to maybe use Raley to make him pure the seventh inning guy, pure high leverage guy. Yeah, he has 3 years of team control, which is a big thing. The Mets want their quality control. That would be a guy you'd have under contract, age 29. He's coming off an injury. Maybe get him cheap.
Now that brings us to the second team, being the San Diego Padres. We already know that AJ Preller is looking to win and win now, bringing in all of these superstar pieces with money no one even realized even existed. We all know that they lost 2 starters in Mike Clevenger and Sean Manaea to free agency. So they could be looking to bolster the back end of that rotation with a veteran. And that brings in 4 options that the Mets could possibly get back in return. First being Jay Groom. He is a 24-year-old lefty. He is currently their 12th overall prospect in their system. 6'6", 262 pounds, a former first-round pick by the Red Sox back in 2016. Now, he was acquired from Boston in the Hosmer trade last season. He has yet to make his major league debut, but he is major league ready. He's a 3/4 over slot thrower, mid-90s fastball, diagonal depth, heavy curveball, late dropping changeup, and a short tunnel slider. And then there's Michael Baez, 26-year-old reliever, 6'8", 220 pounds, an international signing by the Padres back in 2015 out of Cuba. He's pitched just 36 innings since his debut in 2019, mid to high 90s fastball, horizontal spinning changeup, and the occasional slider and sinker. Then that moves us to Tim Hill. He's 32 years old, a lefty reliever, 6'4", 200. He's a former 32nd round pick by the Royals back in 2014, ground ball inducing king, turbo spinning sinker paired with a heavy sinking fastball in the low 90s, and a slider, cutter, vertical hybrid pitch. And lastly, there's Ryan Weathers, 22-year-old lefty pitching prospect, 6'1", 230 pounds, former first-round pick by the Padres in 2018, who's kind of flopped in the majors so far. Mid-90s vertical four-seam, gyro-cutting slider, and a vertical riding changeup.
The most appealing to the major league audience, and that is Tim Hill, funky delivering, pitch for the Royals, pitch for San Diego. Again, we're going to make it clear it is a second lefty, could be a perfect trade chip for the Padres. Guy who's not making a lot of money, which would be benefit to the Mets. He has 2 years of team control. This year in arbitration is probably going to make about $2 million. So why would the Padres give it up? They do have a lot of money tied up into their bullpen. Mikel Baez, right-handed pitcher, 5 years of team control. In 2019, he was a 72nd overall prospect, overall in baseball. He was number 7 overall in the Padres system in 2020. High upside guy. He dealt with some injuries, was a starter. Also has spent some time as a reliever. Same thing with Ryan Weathers, a left-hander guy who can do both start and come out of the pen. He was also in 2019 a top 100 prospect, and that's the 93rd. He was the 5th overall prospect, a little more higher upside. 5 years of team control, which again, that's what the Mets want. They want control. And then Jay Groom, again, 24-year-old big boy lefty, a guy who had some top prospect pedigree, kind of just held around and flopped a little bit, as in 2021 didn't pitch great in A+ ball, moved to Double A, pitch good. They want to make it a 1-for-1, kind of hockey trade, and I would take the quantity of getting a couple of lottery tickets than just one piece. In San Diego, and Preller is a team that would be very willing to trade a few lottery tickets for a proven topic.
And now the third team you can put into the mix, that would be the Baltimore Orioles. Already adding Kyle Gibson, and maybe they might want to bring in yet another piece to their rotation to a very relatively young team. Dylan Tate. There was rumors that the Mets could have picked him up last deadline, but it just fell through. 28-year-old reliever, 6'2", 195. He's a former first-round pick by Texas back in 2015. He's a huge ground ball inducer, fantastic control and good command, mid-90s running two-seam, high-profile slider, and a side-spinning changeup. And then there's Tyler Wells. He is extremely tall, 28 years old. He's a starting pitcher, 6'8", 255 pounds. He's a former 15th round pick by the Twins back in 2016. He's a good contact manager with great control of the zone, low 90s rising fastball, heavy cutting slider. He has a very moving, balanced changeup of horizontal and vertical movement, and a high spin sweeping curveball. Hudson Haskett, 23-year-old prospect, currently the 21st overall in the O's system. 6'2", 200 pounds, a former second-round pick by Baltimore back in 2020. Well-disciplined hitter whose power has really picked up over the last year. An overly athletic center fielder, similar scouted swing to Hunter Pence. Very fast, plus defender with an average arm.
There was a trade on the table for Mancini and Dylan Tate, middle reliever to replace the Trevor Mays and the Michael Givens of the world, to have another quality right-handed arm, another ground ball guy, kind of more similar to Michael Givens. Tyler Wells, a starting pitcher. Maybe the Orioles wouldn't want to give up another starter, but made 23 starts. Big guy, which the Mets have had history with just loving ginormous pitchers. 4 years of team control. You also have 3 years of team control with Dylan Tate. So these are two guys are the big thing with the Mets. They made it clear they want cost controllable. And then, like you said, with Hudson Haskins, played a full season in Double-A, so maybe a year away from the big leagues. But again, just to build that outfield depth of having guys who get on base, another lottery ticket that you can maybe sneak away. The Orioles have a ton of other outfield prospects like Heston Kjerstad, Dylan Beavers, Colton Cowser, Kyle Stowers, who made his MLB debut. So they already have a lot of other outfield prospects. But I would expect if Baltimore were the team that would get it, the Mets would probably try to get back on relief.
Now, the fourth team that could possibly deal for Carlos Carrasco, that would be the Kansas City Royals. This is definitely one of those teams that might look to trade Carlos Carrasco at the deadline for some valuable assets in return. Now, there are 4 pieces that the Mets could possibly get back for Carlos Carrasco, one of those being Scott Barlow. He's a 29-year-old reliever, 6'3", 210, former 6th-round pick by the Dodgers back in 2011. He has a great balance of strikeout stuff, and he's a fantastic contact manager. Tight tumbling slider with extra spin, late dropping curveball, and a gyro running fastball. Taylor Clark, another 29-year-old reliever, 6'4", 217, former 3rd-round pick by the D-backs in 2015. He's a hard-throwing righty with elite control of the zone, high 90s rising fastball, cutter slider hybrid pitch, and a falling action changeup. And then there's Asa Lacy, 23-year-old pitching prospect, 6'4", 215. He's a former 1st-round pick by the Royals in 2020. He has really struggled so far in the minor leagues with his control and command, and also multiple injuries as well. He dropped to the number 10 overall slot in KC's system, but the upside is definitely still there. He has a high 90s explosive fastball, sharp spinning slider, heavy dropping curveball, and a late diving changeup. And the last piece being Adalberto Mondesi. He's a 27-year-old infielder, 6'1", 200 pounds, an international signing by the Royals back in 2011 out of the Dominican Republic. Great defender at shortstop with above average range, switch hitting slap hitter who has really struggled with consistency and to stay on the field as well. He's a great base runner with near elite speed, and he's also the first player in history to make his debut in the World Series, which was in 2015, and that series got magically canceled after that. That's weird, isn't it?
I don't remember that. I didn't Godzilla destroy New York City when in 20.
Yeah, something happened. I don't know. I completely blacked it out from my memory.
Kansas City has, for me, my most appealing piece, and the piece that probably is going to cost more in this trade. That's Scott Barlow. This would be a amazing 7th inning guy to put into this pen. And he has 2 years of control. Why would they move him? The Royals are, again, a team who is not good. They have some young pieces, but they are not in the win now mode. But they're in American League Central. Anyone can win that division. That division sucks. We could trade Barlow for Carrasco, and then if Carrasco has a very good first half, you can flip Carrasco to get some pieces. Maybe you get more for it. And especially in today's market, you'll probably get more for a starting pitcher having a pretty good season than a good reliever at the trade deadline. Taylor Clark's another one of these guys who, again, 3 years of team control in Taylor Clark's case, 29-year-old controllable, cost controllable reliever. Have him out here battling for, again, a spot in the bullpen, which you're going to see a very good competition with guys like Drew Smith, who we know sucks. Dayoka, just throw another name into filling out the rest of this pen. Asa Lacy, the number 4 overall pick in 2020. But the Royals do have a trend of they can't develop pitching, and you started to seeing guys who leave Kansas City end up finally fulfilling that potential. Put him in the Hefner cheating lab that we're hopefully developing. Probably more likely a reliever in the future, which maybe that's why you can get him. He's supposed to be a starter, but I think maybe if you convert him to a left-handed bullpen arm, he could be very sexy. And then why Alberto Mondesi? We have Luis Guillorme. I can already see it in the comment section, which is true, and he's always never helped. The Mets really don't have another backup infield. You have Luis Guillorme, and that's about it. You got a bunch of fat guys and Ruff and Vogelbach and Vientos. One, he's not playing every day, so that lessens his injury risk. He's not going to have to go out and make a start every day like he was with Kansas City. It gives you a backup shortstop. It gives you another backup infielder, which the Mets desperately need. Late in games, he's a more valuable Terrence Gore. He's a guy who you can stick up there and actually maybe hit the ball occasionally, unlike Terrence Gore, who absolutely sucked. Like another guy, steal some bases, play middle infield, play second, short, third, give you another backup infield, and more flexibility on your bench. In worst case, if he sucks, it's 1 year, $3 million. He's gone after the season. So the Royals, again, if a team that they want to pick up Carrasco, to look to flip him at the deadline.
And that brings us to the fifth and final team that could possibly deal for Carlos Carrasco. That is the Minnesota Twins. Now, as for Minnesota, they have really had quite a few of pitching injuries. They've had a lot of players leave in free agency. Kenta Maeda, who is one of the top of the rotation type of guys, he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. So it may be possible that Carlos Carrasco could be a trading option for them. In return, the Mets could get a guy like Austin Martin, 23-year-old utility prospect, 6 foot, 185 pounds. He's a former first-round pick by the Blue Jays back in 2020. He was one of the key pieces that went back to Minnesota in the Jose Barrios trade. He had a tough 2022, which had dropped him to number 12 overall on the Twins prospect list, but he is a disciplined hitter who gets on base at a high clip. He has above average speed and subpar defense. And then there's Jordan Balazovic, 24-year-old pitching prospect, 6'5", 215, former 5th round pick by the Twins back in 2016, coming off a very tough minor league season last year with multiple injuries, high 90s fastball, power breaking splitter, and the occasional changeup. Jorge Lopez, he is a 29-year-old reliever, 6'3", 200 pounds, former 2nd round pick by the Brewers back in 2011, was traded to Baltimore last year and struggled a lot after, but he does have incredible stuff. High 90s running sinker, heavy spin dropping knuckle curveball, a screwball changeup mix pitch with a tight spinning slider, and a vertical rising four seam. And the final player to be mentioned in this video, Alex Kirilloff, 25-year-old outfielder, 6'2", 195 pounds, a former 1st round pick by Minnesota back in 2016. He's struggled to stay healthy since his debut in 2021. Plenty of power upside with a very competitive and very patient approach. Subpar defender, but yet another major league outfielder you can stash in AAA.
Minnesota's a team that I'm definitely intrigued to see. They were to call the Mets and they've been linked to them. Austin Martin being, for me, the most interesting because, he was projected to go number 2 after Adley, and then he just kept sliding down the draft board, and the Blue Jays said, screw it, let's take him. And that trade is looking 2 years later, but what would Martin bring? He's not a power hitter, which again fits the Mets narrative. He's a high on base guy, does not hit for most pop, but again, he's a guy who can play literally everywhere. He can play the outfield, he can play short, he can play second. Jordan Balazovic, throughout his career in the minor leagues, he's been pretty good. And then last year, the injury bug, and he just went from AAA, finally at AA in 2021. Took the jump to AAA and just was not the same guy. Your system, he was a former top 100 prospect. Put him in the Hefner cheating lab that we're hopefully developing. Then you go to the big league pieces. Jorge Lopez, obviously they traded. He went over to Minnesota and it was not the same guy. And if Minnesota is kind of in this wait and see, are they signing Dansby Swanson? But there's also rumors that they potentially are trading Sonny Gray, and the Mets could pounce at another guy to fill that Trevor May 7th inning, 6th inning role. Jorge Lopez, 2 years of team control, which the Mets want. And then Alex Kirilloff, again, another guy, 4th outfielder, kind of potential outfielder, which again, the Mets could need the depth. He was a highly touted prospect, got called up, didn't do much, has not really solidified himself on an MLB team. Another name who's on Minnesota who's got a little bit of trade rumors right now is Max Kepler, which I don't have on here. But Kepler may be a guy you could potentially flip 1 for 1, but you would have to probably attach a few pieces. But again, Minnesota is very interesting to me to see what they do and if they'd be willing to move some of their formerly highly touted prospects after bad seasons.